As you can see on this screen, the title is Pathways Learning D7 in Action. The event format is unlike anything we've ever done at a Pathways presentation, and maybe even in D7, but we're going to have some fun in the process. First thing is we're going to start off in the main room, which is where we're all at, of course, right now. I'm going to provide a little bit of background and introduction material, and it's also my pleasure to share with you interviews for 2 district officers that are here tonight. As well, then we're going to head into some breakout sessions, sort of a back and forth with the main room. It should be a lot of fun, I think. We're going to have some focused group collaboration. It's going to be brief, but we wanted to get it in. At this point, it's the action. We want to not only understand the theory and share the theory, but we want to get the action involved, get your input. And then we're going to be back to the main room to kind of close it out and go through a question and answer period as well, like we always do. The past 2 Pathways Learning Labs. In November, it was really about helping club leaders with alternative Pathways learning styles, specifically looking at those longer term members that have been in Toastmasters for a while, more familiar with the traditional program, the competent communication, competent leadership manuals, as well as other members that might be in a position where they're struggling with online Basecamp or just don't prefer the user interface. We provided solutions for them. And then as well, folks that were struggling with club websites and organizing meetings. And also they thought, these Pathways projects are too hard to keep track of. We gave solutions for that in November. In December, we decided not only to help those leaders, and our thinking was if we can help the leaders that have been around for a while, that's going to help the clubs. And then December was about reaching directly to the members in those clubs. We reviewed those solutions from November, and by the way, those are archived. Every time you've been here, you've received a link from me, of which you'll get again tonight. And both November and December have exact timestamps down to the second of the entire webinar. So if you're kind of curious to see what the entire curriculum is, we'll make sure you have that information. We also reviewed additional tools. For example, a PDF where if a person just got started in Toastmasters, they literally just want to sign up for their Toastmasters.org account. We showed them how to literally go from start to finish level 1. Next, we wanted to help those people that were struggling with creating agendas, including guests on the agenda, that sort of thing, that were struggling with either Free Toast, Easy Speak, that sort of thing. We provided a spreadsheet, and it's at the Pathways Learning Center. We're going to talk about that second as well, to create those agendas and contacts and do it as a shared Google Sheets account. And then finally, there were questions about the Pathways Mentor program, and we came up with a 1 sheet where it just kind of lays it out there. How can we get started mentoring in the club and then integrate that with the Pathways Mentor program? Now, tonight's Pathways Learning Lab. As we mentioned, the first 2 sessions were sort of like the thought. In other words, we laid out the curriculum for the Pathways Learning Center page. I hope you've all been there. If not, I'm going to show you how to get there. But word's getting around. We're happy about that. And tonight's session is the action. So we go from thought to action. And it's going to be really about application of those principles from the past 2 months. We're going to be getting that application by hearing interviews from 2 district officers. Then we're going to get your feedback, we hope, member feedback, using these group breakout rooms. We're going to be identifying issues as well as collaborating for solutions. If you haven't been to the Pathways Learning Center yet, it is found very easily by going to the District 7 website. You can see in the upper section there, it's d7toastmasters.org. Once you're there, you'll see a menu called Pathways, as indicated. There's a little down arrow. Once you use that down arrow, you see these options. You simply click on Pathways Learning Center. Now, of course, it does have its own link, but I'm describing it this way because you may already know how to get to the d7toastmasters.org page. And if you've gotten emails from me recently, I always have the website in my signature. And this is what it looks like. I hope this is familiar to some of you, and maybe it's new for others. This is what it looks like. Here we go. We're jumping into the 2 district officer interviews. Excellent. Let's give a hand to Suzanne. First question for you, for 1 to 2 minutes on each question, if you would. Would you describe your role in the district currently, as well as what you personally are currently doing in Pathways and Toastmasters?
I can tell you in 2 words, training and mentoring. After achieving my DTM last summer, I thought, what's next? And the next logical step was mentoring other Toastmasters and doing training. And I have found it so enjoyable. Although I have a lot to learn, I can at least pass on what I know and some of my experiences. And my learning style is unhappily through making mistakes and then learning how to correct them. So at least I can help other people avoid those unhappy and unnecessary errors. So when I took that Division G director position, I consciously started setting up learning opportunities for the area directors in Division G. And I want to be as honest as I can with them about my missteps and what I learned the hard way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And I think that you're actually a role model on how to interact with your area directors. I learned so much every time I talk with you and I see your events out there in the calendar, that it's an honor to have you with us. The next question, what problems or challenges have you encountered and how did you solve them? Please.
I'd say my biggest problem is onboarding and mentoring new Toastmasters. It's always a challenge. And it's not really a challenge with your new Pathways page, but it's a challenge getting other people to jump in and mentor new members. It's easy to forget for those experienced Toastmasters how intimidating it is to walk into a new club, not know anybody, and then jump into the Pathways system. So how did I overcome those problems? I simply use your webpage. I use it every day or almost every day. Wow. Because I go there myself. And I want to say kudos to you because I love the introductory video you created. And second, I love the way you have organized the page. You have the navigator, which is first. And I think that is such a great resource for a new mentor to print out, have in front, maybe have on a Zoom call right in front of them, and just go step by step. I didn't have to figure out what to do. I just used that navigator, which is a great resource. And then the other problem, I have a few problems. One is matching the mentor to the new member. One thing is that mentors need to be consistent and they need to cover the same basics. Every Toastmaster needs the same basics. It's sometimes tricky because we don't know how to share our experiences. For instance, where do they start? So I recommend that they start with the navigator. I'm mentoring 2 people now, and I'm using the D7 Pathways page resources for them and with them. And I want to also say kudos to you. You did a great job with your Pathways Level 1, start to finish document. There's finally an alternative to getting into Pathways and going through clicking through those presentations. So that document is so wonderful because it helps. It's so easy with those clickable links and those red arrows. Go here, go here, go here. Yes. Is no brainer. And I also like that you put the icebreaker resource PDF on the webpage where it's easily accessible. Again, you don't have to dive into the pathways. You don't have to log in, dive in. It's all right there on the D7 page.
Absolutely fabulous. And I realize you so masterfully just sort of went right into that third question, which was, have you or could you use the D7 Pathways Learning Center page to help? And you've described precisely that. Anything else to add to that, Suzanne? Or
I want to say one thing. You mentioned those experienced members who are coming reluctantly to Pathways at last.
Yes.
I had a member in one club who say, Suzanne, you're going to have to drag me. You're going to have to drag me through the program. I said, okay, just give me your hand. I'll drag you through. But they can look through. They know all of this, but they need to go through the Pathways program system. They need to get into the system. And that PDF document, again, with those arrows, help them go step by step, beginning to end. I thank you, David. It's a great resource.
Wow. Well, that is such an honor, and I very much appreciate that. It makes it all worth it. And we're so lucky to have you in this district. Let's give a hand to Suzanne. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Our next interviewee, let's give a hand to Dr. Gwendolyn Avington. Wonderful. And you're going to recognize these questions, but I think they're quite relevant. It's going to be wonderful to have your input on this as well. Again, as previously asked, could you briefly describe your current role in the district, as well as personally what you're doing in Pathways and in Toastmasters?
Thank you, David, for inviting me to this platform. Currently, in Toastmasters, I am an area director in Area 73, and I am the curriculum coordinator for Toastmasters Leadership Institute, working with Lori Anderson, Bob Hall. Both very much a privilege to me. As for Pathways, I am in my third path, strategic relationships, as well as learning in Toastmasters how to be better communicators and better leaders. We learn how to build good, solid relationships that will hopefully go in with us to the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Gwendolyn. Wonderful. Just love hearing your involvement in the leadership within District 7. And by the way, I also want to say she is our Pathways Proponents Committee chair from last year and my current advisor. So one more hand for that. Thank you so much. My next question for you is, what problems and challenges have you encountered, and how did you or are you solving them?
Thank you for the question. As we moved into Pathways last year as that final option, as Pathways proponents, of which yourself, myself, and Suzanne were last year, we noticed that people were quite hesitant about joining Pathways. Why did it have to change? And we looked at all the time, how can we engage the membership, meet them where they are at, not where we presuppose they should be, but where they are at, mentor them, train them, draw them in. And some of those happen to be people that were used to the legacy program. They weren't new to Toastmasters itself. Yes. But they were new to Pathways. And it was a journey to draw them in. And we are still going through some of that hesitancy now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it sounds like to me, when we talk about the solution, your solution very much at all the time, and I've experienced this with you, is to allow that person to have their own individual approach to learning. Not everybody learns Pathways the same way, and I think you try to meet them where they're at. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, I would, because I believe that is the only solution to get the buy in. Because if you start trying to make people feel like you have to do this or like you're hurting them to a process, most people, their response will be an apprehensive response. But if you say, where are you at in pathways? How do you feel? Draw them out. And then the things that they find as a difficulty, if you then say, well, here, let me show you, which just as Suzanne brought to light, your Pathways Learning Center PDFs help that process tremendously. And one of my favorite things, in addition to the navigator, is the icebreaker, where you can record and record and record. When you have people that are hesitant about speaking in front of people, they can speak to themselves on a mic, or maybe invite a couple friends and say, I'm going to record. Can you be like my audience? It gave another layer to what we were already doing when we were meeting in person. And then you didn't stop there. I like the fact that you have something for beginners, intermediate, and then you get to base camp, the more advanced.
Yes.
And I look at the website now as a living document, because you're always putting things in there. And if people will access the web and look around, I can guarantee they will find things that are pertinent to them or their proteges, if it's not for them, to help along the way to grow those Toastmasters.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I can see that you also transitioned into my last question, which is how could you use the Pathways Learning Center to either help yourself or others in learning? And I basically heard you will direct them in the beginning levels, if that's appropriate, the intermediate, as well as the advanced. And you were liking sort of that flow of learning. It's not just everybody has to learn one way, but in fact, wherever you are in the journey, there's a place on the website for you.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Let's give a hand to Dr. Gwendolyn Avington. Absolutely fabulous. Now we're going to head into hearing from you, if we could, getting your feedback. This is where we're going to be using breakout rooms. There are going to be 3 questions, in other words, 3 group sessions that I'm going to be asking you. You've all been assigned randomly to different rooms. And what I'm going to ask of each of you is, could you please choose one representative per question, in other words, per group session, to list the main group answers. And when we come back to the main room, I'm briefly going to ask what you came up with, because we want to not only hear from you the problems that you might be occurring or experiencing, I should say, but also some of your proposed solutions. All right, we're jumping in. First question for everybody. What is most important in Toastmasters and Pathways? If this seems open-ended, it's intended to be, because just like Dr. Gwendolyn was saying, we all have different things that are important to us. We learn in different ways. So I want to hear your answers. So again, the question is, what is most important in Toastmasters and in Pathways? Have fun. We will see you very shortly. Excellent. Welcome back, everybody. I wonder if I could please get a volunteer to speak from 1 to 2 minutes approximately, even less if you want, or within that time frame. Who would like to share their answers from their group? Who would like to jump in? Okay, PJ it is. PJ.
Okay, I'll jump right in there. The thing that I thought was most important about both Toastmasters and Pathways was the structure it provides. Because you can attend your regular meetings and participate in table topics, but you need the structure of the Pathways program to really have a plan to move forward and to see incremental growth. So Bob jumped in next, Bob Hall, and he said, yes, absolutely, that is important for new members because they are lost otherwise. They need to know what that structure is so that they can figure out how to get started and how to make progress. Then Derek was in our group and he said he is a new member, and he is here tonight hoping to learn a little bit about the structure or more about the structure so he can make progress.
Excellent. Thanks so much, PJ. Very much appreciate that. I loved that commentary about the structure and being able to monitor your progress accordingly. Excellent. Next question for everybody. We are moving fast and furiously. What is the biggest problem you have had in Pathways? And I also want to hear how you think it can be solved, even if it's not solved yet, your ideas. So what is the biggest problem you've had in Pathways and how can it be solved? Your thoughts. Here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Wonderful. I very much appreciate that. And I'm looking for a volunteer. And I'd love to hear from a different speaker this time, just to give that variety, this second of three. And I see it looks like Dr. Gwen had her hand up. Is that the first one you saw too? We'll go with that. We'll go with that. Dr. Gwen, would you like to share your information?
In our group, we had Catherine, Ella, myself, and Jim. In the prior setting, Ella was mentioning how it almost felt like going to Pathways that you had to be IT savvy for things like the check mark and just getting the completion on your project and having the skill to do that. And then in the second session, Jim brought about that it seemed like when we moved from the prior program to Pathways that skills, gestures, vocal variety was not accounted for, but it is a problem that is being solved through the new level 1 that they have put out. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gwen. Thank you. And I wondered, I'm totally clear on what you were suggesting to do with the speechcraft skills, which is the new level 1. I totally agree. And was there a solution in mind with the feeling like you have to be a little tech savvy to get into Pathways, or is that more just an expression of this is a problem, we want to understand that it's a problem?
Just an expression. And if you, as you move around in your living document, come up with something to address that, I'm sure that the membership would appreciate it.
Great. And that is precisely the mission that I've tried to do with this. So thank you for that. And I want to continue to rise to that challenge. Thank you. Very good. The next question and final question for the breakout rooms is, what do you see as the most important project in all of Pathways and why? And if you've only done the icebreaker and you want to talk about that, please do. So again, it's really individual. And I just want to hear from you. What do you see as the most important project in Pathways and why? Here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much. And you know the routine. I'm looking for a volunteer, someone that hasn't spoken yet, ideally. Who would like to help us with this? Who would like to raise their hand? Who do we have? Let's hear from Mike.
Well, for me, Pathways has been a real struggle. So I'm very happy to hear there might be an easier way. I was telling Joan what I've done with it so far. I've used it as a way I bring up all of the paths, and maybe I'll go, that interests me. It may be over in level 3 and I could still be in a level 1. I'm just, my personality doesn't go, I'm an A, B, C, B, D, and then move over a column and go A, B, C, D, as my club will attest to. It's that I can get a whole broad view and stay something on, well, I like that. Test it. Humor, what, and connection, how all that works. And then I go, okay, I'm going to do it that way and build my speech along that way and take the whole broad view of it. That's what I've done with it. And so, but I will like the structure that I can understand that you have put in place, David. I'm really excited about going when in this meeting's over and tomorrow or something, look at that, because that looked really interesting. And the recording thing where I can practice and how I look, how I sound, and all of that. So I think you're on the right track for Mike Long anyway.
Mike Long, you're on the right track.
Big hand for Mike Long, and thank you, Joan, as well. Wonderful. Now we're all technically back in the main room. And we're going to head into an open Q&A, as we just mentioned. And this is going to be assisted by our chat master, Lori Anderson. And then, Lori, if you don't mind, if you could bring it back to me for closing comments at that time, once we're done with the Q&A. And I certainly look forward to your questions. Big hand for Lori, our chat master.
Well, thank you, Dave. I'd like to go ahead and start back with Richard Taylor. He has his hand raised from the last time. And Richard, do you want to go ahead and ask or comment on some things that you were thinking about?
I was just nominated to report some of the things that we had talked about in our breakout.
Oh,
And
please, would you do that for her? Yes.
Well, Suzanne mentioned project management as being something that was a valuable project that she thought everybody would get a lot out of. Eldred emphasized the evaluation and feedback aspect, and that is really an important quality that we look for in Toastmasters, the ability to listen. And so that prompted me to say that the project where the person had to do table topics and then pay attention to what the individual said in their 2-minute speeches and give them some feedback that was really instantaneous and give them some kudos on what they had done as a response. So I think overall, just the interaction with other people who are in your Toastmasters club is important. I wonder if other people see that the same. That question was really good about what do you find is most important about Toastmasters and Pathways? And we, our little group in 2 minutes only got to the part about what was important about Toastmasters. So we didn't really answer the Pathways part of it. Just some feedback for you.
Thank you very much. That is extremely valuable. Big hand for Richard. I really heard your appreciation for some of these projects, particularly, project management. Maybe it could be a high performance leadership, other projects like that. You talked about within the meeting, table topics, getting a chance to speak extemporaneously, get feedback instantly. Excellent for us to know about. Who else would like to pose a question of some sort, a question or comment? I purposely wanted to leave extra time. We have about 20 minutes. And if we go home early, I'm sure nobody's going to complain about that, but I wanted to leave plenty of time. It looks like, yeah.
Thank you,
please.
David. We have a question in the chat from Ella Buchanan. Ella, would you like to speak to that?
I just realized there's a spot in Pathways where I should be able to upload my speeches so that I can review them and see the progress. However, I have all my speeches on LibreOffice and it will not accept LibreOffice platform on Pathways.
And are you wondering how to keep track of your speeches? Is that kind of one thing I'm hearing?
Well, I'm wondering what platform do we have to use to upload speeches in Pathways?
Very good question, Ella. And I think this is one that is not clear to a lot of different folks. The first thing I want to say is that there's no requirement that you keep them anywhere. That is up to the individual. There is an option, which I don't use, some people like to use it, that you can store them within your Basecamp. I find it to be personally a little bit complicated, and I like my organization a little bit better, but people can do that. And can I show you a resource that we created for last month's webinar that you might enjoy?
Sure.
Oh, great. This is at the Pathways Learning Center, so everybody can see this. And as Dr. Gwen talked about, it sort of starts off with the beginning section. Then you scroll down, it gradually gets to the more intermediate resources. And then a little bit further down, after the Basecamp Manager training, we have something called Intermediate and Advanced Level Tools and Reference Materials. This is something that we covered in more detail in the previous webinar, but it's something you might enjoy, Ella. This is something that David created, actually the one speaking, and I just sort of helped you make it just for a little bit more common usage, but it's just called Pathway Speech Tracking Log. It's a spreadsheet, and you can download this. So this is a place that you can log your speeches. You can put your date, speech title, and what is so neat about this is maybe you don't remember all the path names. There's a down arrow. You can click on any one of the 11 paths. There are the abbreviations. You have your level that you can input. All the projects are listed here with the down arrow. So every project is here. And then you would, of course, put your location, all your basics. There are 4 worksheets here. The second one is sort of the general info. I put in red, please do not edit this worksheet. It's not intended to be edited, it's for reference. This is a little explanation. Say if you're not sure, well, what is DL? Oh, okay, that's dynamic leadership, or EC, effective coaching, that sort of thing. Here are all the project names, the full names. And then this could be, Ella, say if you're doing a given path, you would use this worksheet. You would type in your name, your path name, and you start filling in your information. If you're saying, okay, I'm in dynamic leadership. I noticed that I've done, completed this one, but I haven't done my evaluation and feedback too. It sort of helps you keep track. And you might notice that I've got path 2 here. All I did is I duplicated this worksheet. That's if I'm doing a second path. It's the same thing. That's just a very brief overview, but it could be something that you keep on your computer at your house. You could keep it in the cloud if you like to do that sort of thing.
But there is no, there's no, what's the, I forget the word, the IT word, what platform is Pathways using? Because I couldn't upload it at all. I couldn't upload my speech at all. And yet there's a space there for uploading, but because I use LibreOffice and not Word or something else. And I was wondering, do you use Word or Excel or what is it that Pathways uses?
It's looking for a PDF.
It's using for a PDF?
Right.
Oh, that's what it's looking for.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a clarifying question real quick? Ella, you're talking about actually uploading the transcript or the typed out the words of your speech, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were to save that as a PDF, then you should be able to upload it, right, Dave?
I could try that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that could be an option. And just, I also want to be clear, Ella, you're not required to do that in any way, but if you want to do it, it's something that can be done. Yes. Great. Next question, I think, is Lyle. Is that right, Lori?
Yes, we have 2 questions, Lyle and David Shehorn. So let's go ahead with Lyle first. Lyle, go ahead.
Yes. Well, thanks. I just want to quickly go over the questions and answers here. Our group, one of the things, question number 1, what's important, it's support from other members and members feeling that it's worthwhile. The members don't get a feeling that it's worthwhile. Regardless of how they're progressing, they won't stay. Yeah. It's not how you think they should be, it's how the feeling that they get.
Yes.
So that's important. As far as biggest problem pathways, well, when you get up to level 5 for a lot of people, it's pretty hard. It gets a little more difficult. And there seems to be a whole lot more focus on leadership compared to the old program where it's more focused on giving speeches. So that's an issue there. And what's most important in Pathways? Well, most important thing in Pathways is probably the mentoring path.
Yeah.
That's considered one of the things that's, because mentoring is really critical. And without that, people just don't move forward.
Yeah, that's great, Lyle. Let's see if I can give a drive-by to briefly touch on those very dense topics you just gave us. I'm going to share my screen again and try to provide two resources if I could. The first one that jumped out at me was the comment about the level 5 projects being rather difficult. Now, this is covered in much more detail in a previous learning lab, but I'll just give you a quick rundown here on this. This right here is all paths and projects and all 11 paths that I want to share with you. And I've had this comment from people where the projects are too long, they're too hard, they're not, they take a long time. If a given member wants to spend less time on projects, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I'll take an easier path where the requirements are not quite so extensive. And if they want maximum flexibility, you can split up all of these. And again, this is covered a little bit more in detail in other webinars categories for these paths. One of them is called really public speaking. And that one is so flexible. For the most part, you could almost take one speech, and for an entire level almost, you could take that same speech, put it through all the speechcraft skills, and you'd be surprised. It doesn't take nearly as long as you might think. So say presentation mastery is probably the quintessential of this. If you're looking for the most flexible, easiest requirements, shall we say. This right here kind of lays this out. Level 1 is pretty much the same throughout. Level 2 is very similar. But the things that I would encourage people to think about in that regard are, one, have even some flexibility. For example, you might say introduction to Toastmasters mentoring seems very specific. If you really wanted to talk about your trip to Florida and that's what you wanted to talk about, you don't want to talk about mentoring so much, include something in your speech about mentoring, but then talk about what you'd like to talk about. In other words, this is really about the member themselves. You mentioned level 5. Here you can look at something called prepare to speak professionally. Now this is level 5. However long it takes you to prepare an 18 to 22 minute keynote speech is the extent that it will take you for that level 5. Now again, I'm just providing some quick examples here. The other thing that you had mentioned, I believe, just more generally, which I love, is making it worthwhile. And I think that relates to the entire motto of the Pathways Learning Center, which is helping Toastmasters members one at a time. The member is the priority. That I think is a great point. Thank you for that, Lyle. Any follow up on that, or should we go to the next question, Lyle?
So the next one.
Great, excellent. Thanks, Lyle. And who's next on the list? Lori, Madam Chatmaster?
David is our Zoom master.
David, yes, please.
Well, I just want to make a real quick comment on the leadership. There's only 2 paths that have no leadership, and that's presentation mastery and engaging humor. All the rest of them have a little taste of leadership in it. But remember, this is where leaders are born, right? That's where leaders are made, actually, I guess. But I was also going to mention about the mentoring. There are very few people who have gone totally through the mentoring program within District 7. I think I'm sure it's less than 20. And what I try to encourage people to do so you get peers mentoring others is a buddy coach mentoring process. So a buddy helps one person with one project to completion, and a coach helps one person for one level. So whether it's level 1 or level 2, level 3, and then a mentor has a larger picture, but tries to help people plan farther ahead to multiple projects, but just at a very high level, not working through the Pathways program itself, but just helps people focus on what they want to do next, which of the choices of projects at each level to concentrate on. So that buddy coach mentor is my passion, is getting people involved. And if you get somebody who's been a buddy a couple of times and coach a couple of times, convince them to take that mentoring program.
Great suggestion. Thank you, David. I very much appreciate that. And I know you walk your talk. Thank you. We got time for one quick last question. I thought I saw Miranda. Should we jump in with Miranda, Madam Chatmaster?
That's great. Let's do.
Great.
I don't have a specific question. Do you want me to ask a question?
Or you had your hand up, and I thought you.
Oh, I was meaning to applaud for Dave Shehorn's comment. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well,
Maybe
I think we can get behind that.
Specific. But thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Miranda. Very good. At this time, I believe we're done with the question and answer period. Lori, is that correct?
Well, yes, Mr. Presenter, but I would like to share just one thing that I was thinking about through this whole process, and David Shehorn talked a little bit about it, is that even though, I mean, you've got this great website and it's so articulate and detailed and so well done, but also there's the personal aspect of Pathways, and having that buddy program or the Pathways Learning Center, Pathways Learning Mentor is what brings it all together. And so what I see is one of the important things about Pathways is both of those things, and people working together and supporting each other and helping each other with their goals. Because one person may not see things the very same way, which is, probably everybody in this world sees things just a teeny bit different, but you may have one person that is further along in the Pathways project, but yet somebody just can't seem to, there's just one or two details that just really they need to focus in on. And having that buddy program or that mentor really helps solidify those things. And so I want to thank you, David, for helping us see all these things and putting these things together in your learning labs. I really do appreciate it. I think we should give Dave Bones a really big round of applause and say thank you. And I guess this is sort of our end to our question and answer period. And I do want to thank you, Dave, for all of the work that you put into this. It was an interesting program tonight, and I think everyone liked it, liked being able to have a voice of these questions and answers that you had.
Excellent. And do you mind if I just do a little quick closing and then I hand it back to you, Madam Chatmaster?
Please do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Big hand to Lori, by the way. Absolutely fabulous. The support is very much felt. Just a couple of quick things, what's going on in our district. Further Pathways questions and information. We do have something unofficially called Pathways Train the Trainer, and that literally consists of, if you're interested in learning about training others in Pathways, whether at the club level, maybe you want to spread into the district level, simply contact me and I would love to talk with you about that. There's a very specific curriculum in place and it's very much based on the Pathways Learning Center. Would love to share that with anybody interested. And of course, we're mentioning the Pathways Learning Center webpage. A lot of people are learning about it, but we need to get more people knowing about this. Please spread the good word. At the bottom of that page is a contact form. You can contact me through there as well. Mr. David Shehorn, would you put my email address in the chat too, in case anybody wants to get me that way? We do have these monthly Pathways Learning Lab sessions. They're always on Wednesdays from 7 to 8 p.m. We have 5 left this Toastmaster year to change the world. The next one is on February 16th. The dates are there for you to see, and this will also be available on the slides, which I'll send you afterwards for having registered. And then finally, thank you again for attending, your contribution. This is something that means something to me, which is there's always a way in Toastmasters. Is something that a fellow Toastmaster told me when I was struggling, and I found it to be true. I hope you do as well. And I invite you to join us in our mission. I think you probably already are, which is helping Toastmasters members one at a time. At this point, I return control of the meeting to our presiding officer, Lori Anderson. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you, Dave. And I was going to just give that recap of the next Learning Lab, but you've already said that. So please join us again on February 16th for the next one. And with that, I will adjourn our meeting and thank you very much for attending.